All right, welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
So, you know the drill. We take the material you've shared, research, notes, articles, and we really dig in.
Yeah, we try to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising bits too.
Basically, it's your shortcut to getting up to speed on something important, but, hopefully in an interesting way.
Think of it as navigating the info overload. We point out the main landmarks.
And today, we've got some really fascinating stuff. It's excerpts from a study looking closely at Ecclesiastes chapter 3.
A very well-known chapter.
Right. And our mission, if you will, is to unpack what this study says is the central argument.
Which revolves around this contrast, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. The contrast between looking for purpose, for meaning, just in the physical world, what the text calls under the sun or under heaven.
Right, the day-to-day stuff, the tangible.
And then comparing that to finding real, lasting joy and purpose through a spiritual viewpoint, specifically being under the sun.
Yeah, the study really leans into that distinction, and it makes sense. Picking up after chapter 2, look at finding meaning in the world, like through pleasure or work.
So now Solomon, according to the study, shifts gears. He starts comparing that purely worldly search to, well, something else, something spiritual.
And it starts with maybe one of the most famous verses in the Bible, Ecclesiastes 3.1.
For everything there is a season, a right time for every intention under heaven.
And the study jumps right on that phrase, under heaven.
Yeah, it says it's used pretty much interchangeably with under the sun in Ecclesiastes, and it means specifically the physical world, the created world bound by time.
So Solomon's observing that within this sphere, this physical reality, everything seems to have its appointed time. It's fixed.
And then he gives this incredible list, doesn't he? Verses 2 through 8. It's like a whole catalog of human life within these physical limits.
It really is comprehensive.
It kicks off with the big one, the ultimate season we all experience. A time to be born and a time to die.
Yeah, the study points out how that immediately sets the frame. Everything under the sun is finite. Doesn't matter who you are, death is a season for everyone.
And then the cycles of nature and human activity. A time to plant and a time to uproot.
A time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build.
Right, things tied to farming, building, conflict, fixing things. They all have their moments in this earthly context.
It covers the emotional side, too.
Oh, yeah. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. Our feelings also follow these seasons, these ups and downs.
He even throws in some maybe slightly more obscure ones.
Like a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones.
Exactly. And a time to embrace and a time to refrain.
The study has thoughts on that gathering stones bit. It suggests it could mean, gathering wealth, building things up in life. Some people get stuck in that season.
Right, or maybe avoid it altogether. And embracing versus refraining, seasons for connection, seasons for distance. It's all about the timing of physical actions.
Then there's a time to search and a time to give up.
A time to keep and a time to discard. That touches on holding on to things, or letting go, chasing something, or deciding it's time to stop.
Also how we interact.
Yeah.
A time to tear and a time to sow.
A time to keep silent and a time to speak.
Yeah, the study mentions that sometimes you need to speak up, maybe tear down a wrong idea, but timing and love matter. Building up is key. And just conversation itself, knowing when to talk, when to listen, it's all timing.
And he wraps up the list with the big picture dynamics.
A time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. I mean, it covers pretty much the whole spectrum of life lived just under the sun, doesn't it?
It's a complete, almost relentless picture of the cyclical, temporary nature of it all.
Okay, so after laying out this huge list, all these seasons, these activities tied to the physical world, Solomon then asks this, killer question in verses 9 to 11.
Yeah, this is crucial.
What does the worker gain from his efforts? He says, I have seen the task God has given humanity to keep us occupied. He has made everything suited to its time. Also, he has given human beings an awareness of eternity, but in such a way that they can't fully comprehend from beginning to end the things God does.
Right. And this is where the study says the whole thing pivots.
Mm-hmm.
He looks at all this doing under the sun and asks, okay, what's the real profit? What's the lasting gain here?
And that task or burden God gave us.
The study interprets that as this internal battle.
Ah, the battle. Okay. And the battle is between?
Between the physical, the fleshly desires, the stuff limited to under the sun, and the spiritual side of the perspective, the reality you get when you're oriented under the sun.
Gotcha.
Now, the study is clear. The world God made is good. There are things to enjoy, to engage with, But the problem, the human condition under the sun, is that we also have this deep yearning to live forever.
That awareness of eternity he mentioned.
Exactly. We know there's something more. We're stuck in time, but we have this eternal longing that just, well, earthly stuff can't fully satisfy.
So we're going through these temporary seasons doing the planting and building and laughing and weeping. But there's this little voice asking, is this really it? What's the ultimate point?
That's it, precisely. And the study talks about this battle having two phases, kind of. First, there's the moment of faith, accepting Christ, deciding your eternal destiny.
Okay.
But then there's the second phase, which is like the rest of your life. The day-to-day struggle to actually live it out, to keep your focus under the sun, when the world is constantly pulling you back to just the temporary, the under the sun.
Makes sense. It's easy to get distracted.
And the study notes we can't fully grasp God's huge eternal plan from down here anyway. We're limited.
So that's why just chasing things under the sun feels empty sometimes, or like it doesn't last. We're trying to fill in an eternal hole with temporary stuff.
That's the core insight from the study, yeah. Which then makes verses 12 and 13 seem maybe a bit surprising at first.
Right, because after saying, what's the gain, he says, I know that there is nothing better for them to do than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live.
Still, the fact that everyone can eat, drink, and enjoy the good that results from all his work is a gift to God.
Okay, yeah, that sounds way more positive. How does the study square that?
It says it's not a contradiction, it's the transformed view. Our time here, our season on earth, can be happy. We can enjoy our work. But, and this is the absolute key, according to the study, that true fulfilling enjoyment only comes when we're living under the sun, when we're in Christ.
Ah, so it's a conditional joy.
Yes, the study frames it as a gift of God's grace. The ability to genuinely find satisfaction in the planting and building, even the tough stuff under the sun, comes when the Spirit is guiding us.
So the physical actions might be the same.
Exactly. Planting is still planting. But the experience of it, the inner reality, is totally different if your life is oriented under the sun.
So it's less about what you do and more about your heart's orientation while you do it.
Spot on. And the study then moves to verse 14, talking about God's work.
I know that whatever God does will last forever. There is nothing to add or subtract from it, and God has done it so that people will fear him.
And the study emphasizes that fear here isn't being scared. It's reverential awe, the kind of awe that makes you want to worship. It connects it to the Hebrew word yer.
Okay.
And the point the study makes is fascinating. Everything God does, the stuff that actually lasts, is ultimately meant to lead us to worship him, which is a huge contrast to the temporary under-the-sun stuff we were just listing.
Right. And verse 15 seems to touch on patterns, God's consistency.
That which is here already, and that which will be, has already been, but God seeks out what people chase after.
So the study uses this to say, look, understanding God's past actions, like in the Old Testament, is valuable because his character doesn't change. His patterns repeat.
And it adds a little note. God sees what we're chasing. He's aware of our pursuits, whether they're under the sun or something more.
And speaking of chasing things under the sun, verse 16 kind of brings us back down to earth with a bump.
Yeah, it does. Another thing I observed under the sun, there, in the same place as justice, was wickedness. There, in the same place as righteousness, was wickedness.
Oof, not exactly rosy.
No, and Solomon follows up. I said to myself, the righteous and the wicked God will judge, because there is a right time for every intention and for every action.
So the study sees this as Solomon highlighting the brokenness he observes, just looking at the world around him. Under the sun, things are messy. Good and evil are mixed up.
Right. Justice isn't always served here and now. And Solomon concludes, ultimately, God has to sort it out. There's a future time for judgment. It shows the limits of just the earthly view.
Yeah, if you only look at the world, it can seem unfair, even chaotic.
Exactly. And then Solomon gets really raw in verses 18 to 21 about our physical nature.
Okay, what does he say?
Concerning people, I said to myself, God is testing them, so that they will see that by themselves they are just animals. It continues. After all, the same things that happen to people happen to animals. The very same thing, just as the one dies, so does the other. Yes, their breath is the same, so that humans are no better than animals, since nothing matters anyway. They all go to the same place, they all come from dust, and they all return to dust.
That's incredibly stark, comparing us to animals, dust to dust.
The study says this is God letting us see the bare reality of our physical existence under the sun. We think we're so special, but physically, biologically, we're mortal creatures. We die. Our bodies decay.
Like any other animal.
Yeah. And then Solomon asks that question. Who knows if the spirit of a human being goes upward and the spirit of an animal goes downward into the earth?
And the study's take on that question.
That Solomon, limited to his under-the-sun observation, genuinely didn't know the answer for sure about the spirit's destination after death. It highlights again how just looking at the physical world doesn't give you the full picture, especially about spiritual realities.
So purely under the sun, our end looks the same as an animal's, dust to dust. No clear advantage.
That's the stark conclusion from that limited perspective, which leads directly into the final verse of the chapter, verse 22.
So I concluded that there is nothing better for a person to do than take joy in his activities, that is his allotted portion, for who can enable him to see what will happen after him?
And here, the study brings it all back home. It ties it all together. Solomon concludes, from his under-the-sun view, the best you can do is find some enjoyment in your daily work, because that's your lot. You can't see beyond death anyway from here.
Okay.
But the study argues this joy only becomes truly possible, truly meaningful, truly lasting when our final destiny is established through our faith in the Son.
Ah, so it circles back to that core contrast again.
Exactly. Only when our main orientation is under the sun, living in relationship with God through Christ, then we can experience the real joy God intends for us, even in the midst of the mundane tasks and changing seasons under the sun.
So the joy isn't something you desperately find in the activities themselves.
No, it's presented as a gift you receive when you're living under the sun. The study sadly notes that many people, even believers, miss out on this because their focus stays stuck primarily under the sun.
Okay, wow. Let's try to pull the main threads together from this study's perspective.
Sure. I mean, the central argument seems really powerful. It's saying that life under the sun has its fixed seasons, its tasks, its limitations, its cycles.
Right, the temporary stuff.
But true, lasting purpose, and importantly, genuine joy, even within those temporary things, that's only found when your life is aligned under the sun, when you're guided by God's Spirit.
And it really paints a picture of that constant internal battle, doesn't it? The pull between focusing on the physical, the temporary achievements or pains, versus seeking meaning from God, from the eternal.
Absolutely. And that really brings it back to you, the listener. This whole deep dive into Ecclesiastes 3, seen through the lens of this study, it kind of challenges you to think, okay, where is my main focus?
Yeah, am I mostly chasing fulfillment under the sun? You know, in my job, my stuff, my experiences? Or am I really trying to live under the sun, seeking God's perspective first?
Letting that orientation change how you experience everything else.
Yeah.
How you find joy in the everyday through all the different seasons life throws at you.
Because the study really highlights that built-in paradox. We have this awareness of eternity, this sort of ache for something more that this world can't quite satisfy.
Right. But here we are, living in time in these physical bodies, going through these seasons, and we struggle to fully grasp that bigger eternal picture.
It's a real tension.
It is. So maybe here's a thought to take with you.
Uh-huh.
How does that tension, that inherent conflict between the temporary stuff we live through every day under the sun and that undeniable God-given sense that there's something eternal, how does that actually shape your choices, your daily life, your own personal search for meaning?